Alrighty, hello every folks, and good morning. Welcome to the continuation here of the No Movement Challenge. So, alright, quick thing. Sorry that it was a bit of a gap between the first two and the third episodes here. Basically, I was sick. I still am sick. I'm just continuing to be sick. And additionally, the usual life chaos type of stuff. But the good news is, Chapter 2 is actually obtainable. So, when it comes to a challenge like this, obviously there's going to be a lot of logistical questions. For example, there's several maps that are straight uphill. What is the plan there? There are several maps where units don't approach you. What exactly is the plan there? And additionally, there's several maps where you just completely get thoroughly thunder dunked on by a bunch of ranged attacks that you're meant to be able to dodge. So, what exactly is the plan? The plan is that there's several of them, and it's going to be a case-by-case basis. Anyway, so as it stands, our options look a little bit like this: that we are able to hit stuff at reasonably long range with longbows, but this only applies on flat maps. Later on, we'll have access to a finisher that will kind of improve that situation a little bit. But we also have debuffs like Charm and Poison that are able to move units away from us and/or potentially cause their own units to potentially move towards us to be within effective range. So that again is just another option at our disposal. As it stands right now, Charm is more of a defensive option. Whenever melee options get close, obviously it's going to be a little bit of a problem when we don't really have that many frontline units, and when we do, they're usually not going to be the ones targeted. So as a result, it's oftentimes easier to simply charm them and make them go away. So we're going to be going for that. Now, this run, if you were one of those that stubbornly refused to ever use Spell Strike on any of your units, this run will definitely change your mind, because you can very quickly turn a hell of a lot of fights around with something as simple as Spell Strike. What's funny is Spell Strike in general, like, it's an ability that got rebalanced in a very interesting way. See, originally in PSP, it actually was essentially 5 ranks of Spell Strike, and you might say, like many Steam reviews annoyingly do, like, oh, technically it's a loss of depth to have it boiled down into 1. But let me go ahead and explain something real quick. So the way Spell Strike used to work before is that you would achieve a certain level rank. Essentially, you would achieve a certain level with a certain class. You'd be able to then access that level of Spell Strike, right? And then that would give you essentially a flat boost to your percentage odds to hit. There were no guarantees associated, there were no kind of situational differences, it's just like your odds went up by this percent. If the other guy is, let's say, running Spell Ward, those odds go down by that percent. So functionally speaking, the actual passive skill that was essentially 4 out of those 5 ranks was more or less an arms race between those two units. Basically, because of the fact that it was an arms race, we had a situation where essentially one type of unit would end up, let's say, getting hit 100% of the time, and everybody else would receive normal hit odds. It was just a very odd thing to see, where, again, it just went from, like, guaranteed to basically never going to happen. So either way, that's kind of where the weirdness of Spell Strike came up in the PSP version. It's actually why both the One Vision overhaul for that game as well as Reborn switched it over to, well, something more like this. Where Spell Strike is entirely just the buff. So for example, let's say right here with concentration on any of your casters, we can end up getting at least a minimum of 30% hit odds to our debuffs, regardless of any other situation. So instead of a flat bonus, this means that even if we are vastly out-leveled, we can still have a decent chance to hit something as long as we're using that skill. We can apply that buff through other means. The skill just applies that automatically. And I personally find it a really fun way to kind of recycle multiple different things into one thing that makes more sense. Actually, the way that One Vision handled it was that it was applied to certain bits of equipment. So you basically have 2 different versions of magic accuracy in that one. You still have your usual mind thing. So, for example, you give somebody a bunch of mind equipment and their odds are better of hitting. But at the same time, you, for example, can just go get Spell Strike off of one of your pieces of equipment. It keeps moving around. I believe currently it's on Spell Strike daggers, though that might have been moved again. It happens a lot. I don't know why the Spell Strike buff can't sit in place for any couple of months, but oh well. Anyway, back on track here. So what's the plan with this particular run here? Well, we're as I mentioned earlier, we're actually going to be able to get into Chapter 2 this time around. But it's not the way that you might be thinking. See, there were 2 conundrums that came up last time, and I think I have them both solved. So, for the one hand, there was the first question over which route we can actually take in our first primary route split. Because if we go down the law route, there are multiple units up on top of a cliff. Now, funnily enough, it was not the units that I was thinking of that caused a bit of a problem there, but it was different ones, and it was for exactly the reason that I was thinking last time. That effectively there's a couple of units that technically have a route through, but given the way that the AI thinks, essentially, if it has a complicated route to take, it typically will refuse to do so, preferring to stay in safety rather than attempting to go bum rush forward. If you've ever noticed, several maps got new props added, just kind of in the way to prevent units from taking the more obvious route, but those props are still more breakable. Essentially, you can break those props, and if you end up casting a lot of AoEs nearby them, they'll become a bit more aggressive. But in the case of those particular units, they will typically look at the kind of situation. It's like, well, I've got to take like a whole Z-shaped route down over this way. I think we're going to stay up here and just keep sniping from a distance and wait for them to get close. And typically this leads to kind of a pseudo version of the way that it worked in SNES, where like in SNES they were just hard-coded to never move until you reach a particular threshold. So you had the classic RPG thing in that one where you would move units up towards a particular tile, you would hit that tile, and then you would retreat back while they chased you. So the old, old pulling nonsense and what have you. And in PSP, oftentimes they just friggin' charged, and that was it. And in this one, you basically have a mix of a whole bunch of different things. The AI seems to think of a lot of weirdly specific things. Like, for example, I was noticing in that particular scenario with those units on the cliff that there were ways to actually cause them to move, just not towards us. We'll get to more on that later. So, for right now, what I'm trying to set up here with this team is essentially several different support components here. So I'm looking to have one debuff caster for the moment. More would be ideal, but the more squishy units we have, the more healing we need, and despite the fact that I've got a lot of healing, I need to be dedicating a lot of turns towards keeping this happy little square operating, so we're not necessarily going to be looking to do that as much. You might be saying, what about items? We will not be able to rely on items too much over the course of this run, because obviously it's all about longevity for the most part. We will be utilizing some items a little bit later, but for the most part, trying to just item spam our way through maps is going to quickly render us completely broke, since as of right now, the current plan is to just do this just kind of like the Nothing Burger with basically no grinding whatsoever. We'll see how it all ends up playing out if there is some complete brick wall that somehow is only solved by some skill unlock that's one level away or something. Realistically, I don't see that happening, because typically skills are kind of unlocked one phase earlier this time around, and additionally you have just more options in general. Like, I can't even tell you how frustrating it is for every one of those suboptimal challenges and whatever else that I was doing. Like, how frustrating it constantly was to run into those situations. Like, man, this run would go from absolutely abysmal to shockingly simple with one skill unlock. And this is where we had those situations where, like, the one wizard that that I hired with like Spell Strike and Balmy Breeze was able to just basically carry half a chapter by himself. So either way, it's one of those just really nice kind of smoothings that I really appreciate about Reborn. It's like you don't have that annoying anxiety that you end up, like, you see the skill that you want, and you know that by the time you can afford to use it, you'll already be in a new kind of like level and equipment situation, at which point it'll now be another skill that you want, and it's just that annoying carrot and stick, and then half the time you forget about the carrot that you were chasing in the first place. Anyway, it's I'm just glad that the skills were handled this way. And actually, so an interesting thing, that there was so I saw a few discussions for like a potential Final Fantasy Tactics remake. I just wanted to throw some 2 cents on that particular idea. Because I saw there were some folks that were saying that they would be extremely pissed if they went for a similar kind of a situation of unlocking skills over time like they did in Reborn, and they would riot and whatever else. Nobody's going to do the Reborn system in FFT, because like the skill unlocks are completely different. In Tactics Ogre, it's entirely like a progression-based thing. You need certain skills at certain times. Realistically, you do not need Steadfast until you're way later in the game, and in Reborn, that's exactly when it unlocks. In PSP, it unlocks, like, roughly similar to then. Also, potentially way earlier or way later, depending on what classes you were using, creating this awkward situation where you just plain might not have access to a skill that is kind of intended for use in all of these maps that have a bunch of cliff drops everywhere, you know? Anyway. So getting back to it though, so for FFT, I'm pretty sure they would probably just end up going for more of a modern XCOM thing if they were to actually change the system, because obviously a lot of RPGs are going away from the old points thing to a more potentially simplified points thing. If we like, let's say we take a look at what happened with Unicorn. They basically did the same thing as TOR there with its level up skills there. But we see things like modern XCOM there, where they'll, let's say, get an achievement of some kind, or they'll end up getting a level up of some kind, and then they'll go and get themselves go ahead and get themselves some skills for it. And I would assume they're probably going to handle it something similar, because it's not necessarily like the points themselves were the problem. Oh, by the way, also first casualty of the run there. So it's not necessarily that the points themselves were the problem, it's more so the fact that it depends on the game, and additionally the fact that a lot of times those points were doled out in kind of single-digit increments when the actual skill unlocks were in 3 digits, for example. So you'd have those situations where, like, where you'd go and do multiple back-to-back fights, and you'd have that perfect moment where you just did a couple fights, you're feeling good, you're really feeling it, you're ready to go forward and, unlock your new skill, and then suddenly you're like 3 points shy, and it's like, why could you not just give me those points? It felt like such a dick moment for those points. And TOPSP had that exact same problem, where it had those moments where it's just like, please, can I just have this tiny, minuscule amount of points? I don't want to go do another map right now. Like, I was feeling ready to go make some progress, and now you're making me do another map, or completely forget about this thing. So I'm pretty sure that they'll just end up doing something like you beat a boss, or you beat a map, and you get a single point or something. Like, I'm sure if they end up doing a FFT remake, which I personally think that they just are, and they're not telling anybody, the skills were always meant to be unlocked in a kind of separate order for that one. So I'm fairly positive what we'll end up seeing is again, just like more of a simplified point system. Weird little tangent to go on, I know. But anyway. So with that one flat map dealt with, we now have another map, which frankly, the way to handle this map is basically the same in this run or any other run. You get a breach on one of the griffins, you hit it with your longbows, done deal. I'll just go ahead and skip it ahead a little bit. I went for a few recruits. This one, just so you know, I do have a lot of extra clips here today, so it went a little bit longer here. But anyways, so yeah, the two will approach from seemingly random locations. It only takes a handful of shots from your longbows to get the job done. Ideally, you want an ice archer for this, but really any other unit can do it. It's just the fact that it's swampy, there's a good bit of range in between you and them. And the guaranteed criticals, and the fact that they can't parry, that makes it very convenient to handle them with bows as opposed to anything else. Poison will also do the job, but it's a bit less reliable here, but might as well do both, you know? Anyway, we'll go ahead and skip past this section here real quick. Here, actually, let's go back to that one clip there. See what it was that actually ended up finishing them off. Because, believe it or not, we have like 5 more fights in this particular section, and I don't want it to be 2 hours long. So we ultimately do end up getting all of those multiple shots. You get the breach, you get the ice bonus, you get the tremendous crit, and, you know, goodbye to birdie. You don't have to get them all the way down, they just have to be down to 10%, and sometimes it feels a little bit more generous. Conveniently, we did end up getting a buff card, because that ended up giving access to Ice Blast 2 early. We don't get that for a decently long chunk, and that might come in handy later. For the moment, I ended up putting it on Canopus because it's just kind of a little bit funny to me that the Tier 2 of Ice is weaker than the Tier 1 of Wind if he's matching the element. But anyways, that's neither here nor there, it's just kind of amusing to me. Anyway, he has the option to spend more MP to perform worse. So I started going through the different weapon types here to see what exactly was available, as well as was going to go pick up a few more items. Picked up a Blessing Stone. So this is, just so you know, this first time going through Balmamusa, I made a bit of a mistake. See, I was excited about a new route I had planned for Chaos, a new trick that had suddenly come to mind that I was very, very, very excited over, because it means we get to use one of the most niche mechanics in the game to functionally break a fight that otherwise would be impossible. Because the two completely impossible things seem to be the law route, kind of a brick wall units, as well as the Chaos Zapan fight. And so I was really excited about this idea I came up with for Zapan, and in my excitement, I ended up accidentally hitting the wrong button, so ended up going down law this first time around. This fight goes exactly as you'd expect. We just basically shoot a bunch of longbows down at these guys, and you know, I'm not sure what else you would expect here. It's just like, this is the most optimal fight in the world for this particular party. So we just take a bunch of free training shots. I do end up taking a bunch of ineffective shots with some of the weaker units in order to try and unlock their finishers, since we do have level 10 available on several units at this point, so the sooner we can get that, the better. Anyway, so we get these last few shots going, poison several units, charm several units, as you do, and I was trying to go for Chaos again, and then I kind of sat down. I was going and fidgeting around with the buttons, and accidentally picked the wrong button. So let's go ahead and take a sad sip of coffee over here. Those moments when you don't realize that you hit the button until you hit the other button. Because originally I was thinking, and then the thinking turned into not thinking. So he decides to go bloody his hands and all that. Okay, so first uphill fight actually wound up turning out kind of interesting, because there's a bunch of interesting things that you don't normally see from Ravenous here. So once again, we're going to skip through this because I don't want this to be insanely long. So the thing with Ravenous is that she is completely neutral to everybody here. She will attack both sides, and the thing is, she actually seems to view both sides as kind of half of her aggression, so to speak. So you'll notice over the course of this fight, we use Charm as a way to get her off of fighting us and whatever else, but she doesn't actually go to fight the other guys. She actually goes to help the other team. So she effectively becomes passive towards both sides, but whenever she turns back aggressive, she becomes aggressive towards both sides. So either way, it's kind of interesting that that's there. So my first initial plan was, you know what, if these guys decide not to move down, like I've seen them do before, basically the plan is to just use Ravenous to try and, like, let's say we heal her up, she goes out, she takes some shots, and then we retreat back. So, well, not that we can really necessarily retreat, but hopefully she retreats back. That was the plan anyway. It wasn't a very good plan, but it was a plan. Ultimately, let me go ahead and save you the next 45 minutes, in which she ends up just approaching and just getting up in our face the entire time. She gets charmed, but she refuses to attack anything. She'll heal stuff nearby her, but that's kind of about it. Meanwhile, it's taxing our Enchantress quite a bit here to be able to keep that going. And I was actually a little bit surprised that Felicia actually ended up being useful over the course of this run. It's not that she's usually not useful, it's just she used to be the sort of lucky charm character for a lot of challenge runs back a few years ago, and I actually have not used her for any runs on account of her annoying voice acting ever since then. Because as soon as Reborn happened, I used her on my very first run. I'm like, hey, look, I get my lucky Felicia back, and oh my frickin' god, that voice. So she was just permanently taken off the roster at that point. Now, granted, that's not a really good reason to not really use a unit. Being trained as a cleric, she comes in with slightly higher mind, meaning her odds of landing a debuff, while only like 5% higher than, let's say, Voltaire. Spoilers for later. It's a bit of a... it's useful. It's not as useful as concentration by itself, but it is useful. It does get our odds above 80% a few times, so that's always nice. Anyway, so these units are generally running down to go attack. They hit us once, we hit them with a bunch of longbow shots, we charm them, we send them back at their enemies. Their healers then pull forward in order to support them, at which point those guys also get drawn in, and that's more or less how we're going here. Thankfully, due to the fact that they love lining up on the ridge here, this gives us a lot of very convenient shots with the missile spells, yet another reason why the Rune Fencer is freaking amazing. The missile spells, while they occasionally will get made fun of for not being as strong as something like summons, like, their sheer utility is just really useful. Like, it's kind of the old thing of, like, yes, a pistol is less powerful than, like, a friggin', assault rifle or something, but realistically, one of them is going to be more practical for more situations, Anyway, so it's just a convenient little kind of mid-range ranged thing that's going to be available in many of our units. And there's actually one thing that I ended up correcting on my my zombie here. See, for my zombie, she actually didn't end up coming in for this particular fight, but she had a bit of a problem. When I was using her with a spear, it's not that she couldn't necessarily hit anything with that spear, but she was oftentimes put in a position where she was meant to be spamming missile spells, but unfortunately would not end up doing so, just due to the fact that she was just knocked out and she got back up on her feet. So the issue with that is the fact that she would be in a perfect position, for example, to take a shot at a squishy, and it just wouldn't end up happening. So I ended up switching her over to a crossbow, so we are going to run light crossbows on Chloe there, but that's going to be a thing for later. As you might have already probably figured out, yes, this particular route did end up being a complete softlock. This fight just wound up being kind of interesting to me. So they keep coming down, and what's interesting is that the archer on this route only was the same kind, seemed to kind of think the same way as the AI in training does when you fly on top of Almarga's walls, in which she actually kept trying to kite the team. So, we let our zombie guy continuously get killed over and over. We used heals to get everybody else back. We used a bunch of charms to go send everybody back their way, as you do. And ultimately, it just ended up being this loop where we did this for absolutely ages. But that one archer up top, she found her way up to the roof this time around, and she's regularly seeing these opportunities that she can run in and take a shot, but she can oftentimes run away before we get a chance to counterattack. So, like right here, I believe she ends up actually getting a hit off. But it seems like the AI has this sort of a confidence thing to it, where if you have certain units of theirs that are up front, they'll oftentimes try to move in to support them. If they get taken out, oftentimes they'll run away to play it a bit more safe. Oh, and also you might have noticed that our kind of a neutral neutral Ravnus over there happened to pick up multiple fizz cards and crit cards, so she just kind of demolishes everything in her way right now. Very, very unlucky. Ended up burning through all the blessing stones in this particular kind of playthrough here in order to try and keep the party alive from her constant melting crits there. In this situation, this is really when you want to bring along a Brand of the Sacrifice, and it's something that I will be using on my frontliners from here on out. I bought one, I just never put it on at this point. So these situations are exactly what you would keep a brand for. Basically, even with her crits, even with her physical bonuses, just a simple brand would be enough to basically render her attacks more or less moot, and we would be able to heal past them. At least until we could get Charm going again. I should also probably mention by this point I was extremely tired, so playing kind of slow, but anyway. This continues on for quite some time. We keep trying to charm Ravnus. She keeps dodging 60%, like it's frickin' XCOM or something. She goes around collecting all the loot bags because, of course, I was curious at this point whether that meant that she would keep them or hand them over, because neutral characters oftentimes will just hand over that stuff that they got, so who knows? That guy ended up not wanting to join us. And then that one archer just kept staying out of range. And ultimately, what I had to do is actually fire back and forth between the Beast Tamer and Canopus in order to actually get his rank 10, so that he could get his finisher, so that I could actually reach that archer up there. And this is a trick that we'll probably end up having to employ again over the course of this run, where if you are, for example, looking to power train a weapon skill during the fight itself, if you, for example, shoot that unit with that particular weapon skill, that it will once again count as a tick of experience towards it. So, like, let's say I have him firing at the knight because the knight can resist his shortbow arrows, but I also go ahead and have the Beast Tamer firing at him so that he gets additional training from that. So we'll occasionally be using relatively weak weapons for stuff just like this. Anyway, so this continues on for quite some time. A very long time, in fact. I don't even know how many clips there were of this. Oh, yeah. Oh, no, this wasn't that moment yet. Hold on. where was it? Because ultimately, that archer actually ended up having enough of it. So what I was trying to do here was I was trying to injure Ravenous and then charm her so that hopefully she would retreat back. Like, ideally with the charm, she would go back, she would heal the other unit. Then we hit her with a finisher, she gets at low health, and then ideally retreats back to heal herself. That was the thinking anyway. But unfortunately, it just resulted in Ravenous getting shot here at some point. That's always fun. Once again, still shredding everything with finishers, as you do. Is she already gone at this point? No, she's not. Where was it? How long was it until that finally happened? Because, again, you have no idea how long this particular map took. I was here for ages. Yeah, so ultimately the archer just shot her instead. So that's the thing, and this was literally right before Canopus. Like, this was the turn Canopus got his finisher finally, and finished off that archer. So just the entire thing was just one big mess of adding insult to injury. Oh man. So this map is possible. It's like eventually the archer will make a mistake and get within range, whether you have to go knock out your own units or leave somebody in front to suddenly get a finisher. You know, you have those options available to you. It just takes quite a decently long time. So eventually after this we started just shooting Canopus over and over to give him more MP. So every attack that somebody receives and gives a tiny little trickle of MP, just like the TP system back in PSP there. Was there that enough P's in the sentence for you? So either way, it's useful for basically forcing somebody to have more focus, so to speak. You're slapping somebody upside the head so that they do their finishers better, but she stayed within range to just get finished with a one-shot instead. Vice promises to kill us, as he does, and then we move on to Balmamusa, and things are sad. Well, we already were in Balmamusa, but now we're in third Balmamusa. So, once again, you know, just living the Balmamusa life. So this particular map is a problem. It is the only time that this map is really used for anything, but we are entirely relegated to this one little chunk down here at the very bottom. Those flyers were the ones that I was expecting to try and stay away, because oftentimes they will try to hit you. The thing was, they ended up approaching just fine. They completely did not care that we couldn't reach them. They just ended up going and making themselves reachable. The rest of these guys actually went and filed ahead straight forward, with no problems whatsoever, right into the meat grinder. And ultimately, what was the result of all this? Well, they died. We ended up recruiting a couple of them. We ended up kind of blowing away all the rest of them. They are still the same units as last time in Balmamusa, but we're a bit stronger this time around. So basically, we just instantly get an easier version of the last two fights, just to show that we're here to mop these guys up. Now, the thing was, this is fine until we realize that there's 2 units left. And they're just up there, and they're not moving anywhere. So, you see those bushes over there to the side? See, all those bushes, all these little kind of prop pieces that are in their way, they can navigate around them, but they will choose not to, because they're trying to essentially stay to the farthest point that they can get right now. So what I figured was, okay, we need to somehow trigger the AI to think that we are approaching. So first thought was to start just kind of pushing units in all directions and see if getting a few units up there would potentially reach some invisible line that would cause them to advance forward. So getting these guys over to the edges didn't really do anything. So next thought was I need to move that zombie on the left up as far as he can go, because that's the next farthest point. Maybe somewhere on the kind of x-axis there would be far enough to get something done. And so so went another attempt of just rolling for those really low percent kind of knockback odds. As you do, eventually they got forward. Eventually I got some archers into position to make further moving forward possible. And then it became clear that even our farthest range attacks had no hope of reaching them whatsoever. So I started thinking, technically I have the means to move some of our units around courtesy of the Acid Rain on Felicia. We've got guaranteed pushbacks on our longbows. We can do some short-range pushbacks with the Beast Tamer and his blowgun. And additionally, we can take some shots like that one right there to shuffle them into position. So this would allow for awkwardly shuffling some units around. So at this point I'm thinking, okay, maybe they're counting the number of units. Maybe if we moved some units forward, we'd get somewhere. So kept thinking, and yeah, we're going to skip a few episodes because it's literally just this. Just shuffling for ages and ages and ages and ages and ages. Like, every one of these little movements, I was hoping to kind of crack the code there to get them to move slightly. And they did. You see that wizard? He moved to the left of the caster there. Well, technically her right. But he moved over 2 tiles. So somewhere in this, they did actually end up readjusting themselves to try to face the party a little bit better. And I tried moving everybody from like one side all the way to the other. I tried moving them to the opposite side. I've tried moving them all the way back. Those guys will basically only get aggressive once you hit about the middle of the map or so, and even then they will still retreat. So functionally speaking, this map ended up becoming a bit of a soft lock. Okie dokie. Apparently, I forgot to pause the thing, but it's fine. Basically, what you saw was the law route getting completely freaking soft-bricked. So, had to go back to the beginning of Balmamusa there. Basically, no matter what direction I was moving units over to, it was going to result in the same thing. They would either end up shuffling side to side very slightly, or they would just end up not doing anything whatsoever. And the main way to potentially solve that would be to somehow break the props. And I tried breaking other props on the map to see if that would do something. I tried putting units into critical to see if that would do something. I tried going and knocking out my own units to see if that would potentially accomplish something. Nada. So none of it was working. Theoretically, there is one way that it could happen, but it would require an extraordinarily large amount of luck, and that would involve essentially using the recruit mechanic to go and hire somebody on top of the building. So if there was a recruit, for example, the archer likes to come down on top of that building there. If he was recruited, and then we had specifically a tremendous shot, kind of a short bow archer, they would have just the angle to be able to push them forward. The throwing rocks have a hard time reaching there. Longbows have too much of a dead range without disabling the archer entirely for the entire thing. And even then, that's only a theoretical thing, because he might be able to get to the edge of that rooftop, but realistically, they'll probably just end up casting at him and running away. So there's no guarantee that that would work whatsoever, and then ultimately it may potentially just involve using that one archer to solo the map. So if the Chaos route ends up getting completely bricked, I do have a separate save right before Balmamusa in which we can potentially try that approach out as well. But for the time being, we're going to go ahead and pursue this way cooler route down Chaos. So we told Leonard to go screw himself, and yeah, then we'll go ahead and not do a genocide today. This one ended up being dramatically easier on account of not getting completely, thunder-dunked by not Aircell, but by Ravenous there. So she gets killed off by the world's dinkiest crossbow, naturally. It was a very rapid infection, you see. But yeah, basic bowgun takes her out. I mean, at the very least, they could have given him a normal-sized crossbow. It's kind of wild that that they just deliberately pick one of the only weapons that has basically 0 shot of actually killing her here, and then just shoot her with it. But, oh well. So let's go ahead and continue. So this one ended up going a decent bit better. While the layout of this party is very similar, it's not the same. And additionally, they are a little bit more aggressive. There's no Ravenous here. They typically will come down and come after you one way or another. If you attack their ranged units early, they will pull back. So one of the ways that we can handle it is just like we did before. We go ahead and we put recruiters along our front here. We let them approach forward, and they will. Essentially, they will attempt to support with their fencers, while the knights will try to get in close, as well as the warriors and berserkers. The knights will occasionally pull back to heal, but they're usually too slow to make that too practical of a thing. We charm whoever we want to charm. Whoever is just within range here, the archers will attempt to get close, and there's that archer taking that same tile that was a problem before. But thankfully, due to whatever exactly was different in their party lines here, they decide to go around those top 2 roof tiles rather than staying up there. So that does end up helping us out in the long run here. If we end up taking any crits, I can tell you that there will be certain maps where it will be very beneficial to potentially curse our own units if we are actually taking this concept into the postgame, because there will be some cases where you definitely want to be moving backwards, and if you can guarantee crits against yourself, that could be very useful, and some of your units will not be able to essentially be moved. So, like your frontline units, I can tell you already that there's going to be cases where I'm going to be cursing my frontline units for the purpose of, getting them crit backwards, assuming we get that far. Either way, they keep firing, we keep healing. This one isn't too bad. They do get access to longbows and stone bows at this point, which are fine. They're a bit better versus armor than the previous options. And additionally, our squishies are still a bit threatened, but thankfully they don't have too much of an advantage here. The crossbow up there does have an elemental advantage. I believe she was a crossbow, but we're healing her away well enough. That caster does end up getting taken out, and actually one thing that I forgot to cover this. In that law attempt, Voltaire actually ended up dying over the course of that attempt there. I'm not sure how that got cut out, because sometimes it just corrupts files and they get lost. But yeah, Voltaire ended up dying in that attempt. Keep an eye on Felicia this time around. It's actually the reason that I ended up having Voltaire become a wizard, because unfortunately we lose Felicia in the dumbest way possible. See, everything was going so well. These guys were all getting close, they were getting charmed, they were attacking their own guys, the archers were staying within range, everything was just absolutely going wonderful. These guys were taking massive dark weight hits, the crossbow ends up taking out Felicia, but it's fine, we've got like 5 blessing stones in the party, all of them are surrounding the unit that's downed, but, we might need some of those for later. So, for the moment, we're just going to keep focusing on these other guys. This fight should be over before we have an issue, right? It's fine. So we go for the stab and recruit, as we do. None of the recruit attempts in this particular map end up succeeding, if I recall correctly. But either way, they're making some progress. We're seeing lots of units getting at low health. Felicia's still at a 3-turn countdown. This is fine. We're fine. There's no real issue. It's all good. She ends up getting a crit health steal. Again, one of those many reasons that that really benefits a lot of your casters to have that health steal on there. It may not be the most damage, but if that mess crits, like they are sitting pretty, because now they've not only wounded the other guy, they've managed to save you a turn from healing. It's good times. But either way, that caster ends up getting beaten to death with a shield. Felicia's still at a 3-turn countdown. This is a wonderful turn. Things are just, it's awesome. We're gonna have nothing but a perfect run right here. That is mediocre coffee today, actually. But you know what? It'll work for the situation. But yeah, she's about to go to a 2-turn countdown. I mean, they're down to almost no units. They've just got they've got 2 injured warriors and an archer that's within hitting range. I mean, what could possibly go wrong? So anyways, these awkward warriors keep getting into our blind spots here. So basic shortbow isn't going to be enough to punch through chainmail and shield. Longbows are in an awkward position where they're primarily firing with their dark weights at this point, so they're relying on their overheads. But yeah, they managed to find all of the awkward spots in our party, but it's fine. Felicia still has a 2-turn countdown. We've still got attacks on all of them. There's the archer dead. Nothing can possibly go wrong. She's down to 1, but it'll be fine. This one will get recruited, and things will be great, and, nothing to worry about. Then our zombie's back, and she gets a little bit of crossbow training, and things are, just... Oh, it's looking up so good. And, by the way, for the sake of reference, so many shots were done with Canopus on that failed route that he actually ended up unlocking all of his finishers and maxing out his weapon ranks. Awkward voice acting aside, unfortunately, yes, we totally forgot to revive Felicia, and so she wound up dead. Whoops. Anyway, that was legitimately just an accident, though. Like, this time around, she was actually kind of earning her place in the team pretty darn well, so I might go back to putting her on teams for challenge runs. Any darn ways, yeah, nothing much to be said there. I should have just gone for the shield bash. For some reason, I was going for, like, I wanted to do either the shield bash or something else, but unfortunately, oh, right, I was going for the recruit. That's what was happening. But yeah, so this lady keeps finding all these awkward openings, and so finally we just decide, screw it, fisting. So we just go towards just punching them down, because they will just hide in the awkward parts of our party. They're finding those 8-tile ranges where our direct missiles can't hit. Our archer is getting their fist parried, which is just some Dark Souls shit. And then finally, the last fencer over there takes them out. So they were being tricky. We get all of our debuff spells back. So yeah, it felt super weird that Voltaire died on the Law route, and then on Chaos we had Felicia die. So one way or another, we're going to have one of our intro characters die. It seemed a lot more fitting in my head, because for some reason I was mixing her up with Sarah, but Sarah died during the passive... I mean, you don't know about that run yet. Anyway, moving on. So, Chapter 2. So this comes with another question, because Chapter 2, Aerosol is oftentimes seen as being pretty brutal even when you can move. She is a pretty notable power jump for this part in the game, and technically you can go and grind up and stuff like that to give yourself a minor advantage, but she still hits unusually hard. And this is especially true for the fact that many of our characters are going to be running water elements, which she is very notably strong against. So I go ahead and set up Voltaire as a dagger wizard. I figure parrying is going to be a bit more useful versus the arrows that he'll now be facing. And I go ahead and set up some item loadouts on our people here. So I give some filters of ashes to help folks dodge a little bit. As well as we get some dodging items on our zombies. The zombies are put on the flanks to try and divert away some of the attacks. So what I was hoping for was that Chloe in the back might take some of the ranged attacks. Unfortunately, I think I put her one tile too far, so that she was potentially causing some actual like firing arc issues, because I would have figured she probably would have been the one getting fired at. Also, he was right. We were there. We really did not do much of anything aside from stand still. I mean, she was talking about folks with broken legs. I'm pretty sure our entire party, except for Cashwa, has broken legs. Anyway. So, Lex, on the other hand, actually ended up getting himself a good bit of a reward after the end of this fight, just due to how well he did holding that flank on his side. So the layout of the party was looking a little bit like this. I knew that there was a decent chance that Aerosol would get aggressive, going towards a squishy water unit, which would be our archer over there. Our archer unit, despite the fact that she is essentially taking a big chunk of extra damage because of the lightning element thing, also partially resists the attack on account of also being a longbow archer. So effectively, this means that she can survive it better than, for example, the healer that was going and giving that same kind of situation a few runs ago. Anyway, so Chloe here is not going to be too terribly useful, but she's set up in a position to give dodge buffs to our wizard and our caster in case the melee units get close. We've got the debuff guy who's supposed to be inflicting a lot of poison as well as charm in order to try and deflect away those units from the front to cause Aerosol to go forward. When she decides to go forward, she is fairly aggressive. Unfortunately, she is also a very heavy hitter, so we want to take her out as soon as possible. The thing is, she's got a lot of healing support. She's got, I believe she's got a fencer over there that can heal, but she's got a knight and she's got a cleric, and both of them will keep her topped off. So you don't want to be targeting just her. That's one of the things for healing management when it comes to challenge runs in this game. That you want to make sure that the target that you're firing at is not the lowest health bar or even the second lowest health bar. So what we did, we've got the Berserker injured over there, we've got the caster, the Hawkman over there injured, and that's going to divert their healing away to the other side. So she is now out of range of Aerosol if she decides to move forward. So we'll continue putting pressure on that guy, but we won't try to kill him off. Additionally, we are going to try and get some of the other units taken out here. So, given where I'm expecting Aerosol to go, we've got the Berserker that's poisoned down there at the bottom. While I will attempt to recruit her, she is also there, ideally, in case she doesn't get recruited, as somebody that would be able to divert healing. So she does end up getting recruited here. At least not on this round. Whoops. Well, I guess spoilers for later. She does end up being the one recruit of this particular fight. But effectively, again, we're doing the old kind of sniper trick thing of wounding a bunch of units to divert their healing to make sure that our actual target is not getting healed. So we attempt to go for the charm on their healer. If you can get that off pretty early, that will very instantly tilt this fight, because now that knight has to take over healing for the entire party, and he simply does not have the means to do that. Now, the added benefit of essentially taking out one of their units and getting a weakened one of our own here is that they will aggressively chase down that unit while our original party is unaffected. If they die, they die. If not, extra free unit, you know? So we're not going to go too far out of our way to protect those guys. We end up losing our water archer for obvious reasons of she's getting completely, shot to ribbons by Aerosol there. But the knight is still currently an issue over there on the left, so we need him to be busy. So we have the healer that's currently busy on the right, we need the knight to be busy, but if we can get the knight busy with fighting, that gives us a pretty golden opportunity. So, first knight decides to go run forward, fantastic, she's in the fight now, she probably won't be doing much support, and then he gets involved as well. So hopefully in this situation we can get them locked down. Additionally, the caster is starting to become a little bit of a problem, but he's still more useful here as a bit of a tool to make sure that the attacks are not coming towards us here. So, decide to finally tap into those items here. So, Mending Seeds are going to be massive around this point in the game here. And I also decide to go move the healer off to the side in case we need to go bring her back. Potentially, it would kind of just divert some attacks over that way. It's there as kind of a back pocket idea if we need it. But I'm going to have Sarah continue firing on here. I know that no matter what, Sarah is always going to be the second one that's attacked, so she can safely keep attacking without needing to be completely topped off. At which point Aerosol steps in, says, hold my frickin' beer, and then comes in with a 415 because she just picked up a fizz bonus. Again, she is already stat boosted on account of, trying to match her lore, so to speak. She has the additional 30% on account of the lightning damage, and now she's picked up another 25% on account of that fizz card. So either way, she is monstrously powerful against that one archer, but we also know that we can completely make sure that she will go after that unit. See, the higher damage they do, the more likely they are to go after those particular weaknesses, because they're looking to score as much points as they can within the system, So in this case, we've managed to drop some leadens on her, so she's slowed down, she's not necessarily running away terribly fast. And essentially, we have her at half health. We've got multiple of their units at half health. Their healer is looking a bit worse for wear, so we have the zombie warrior go after her to keep her pinned a bit more, to keep that healing going, but again, we're not trying to kill her off right here. It would, for some reason, she decides to go do the big brain play and decides to go attack Chloe instead. Now, granted, when it comes to the AI, oftentimes if they see a kill, they'll take it. I really was not expecting her to do that, but she basically threw the fight, because if she had healed any of the other two units, I would have had to put some additional pressure to make sure to, to keep them pinned down. Instead, what ended up happening is that we ended up getting two Dark Weights from Canopus as well as our Ice Archer onto Aerosol, which got the job done, since they were too busy healing the other weakened units. So it ended the fight a couple rounds earlier, but either way, it is what it is. So that's how it's done. Basically, through controlling their three healers, you can get this fight pretty comfortably under your thumb. Aerosol ends up leaving, as she does, and we are finally into Chaos Chapter 2. So this leaves Chaos and Neutral routes open to us. So we'll kind of see how that plays out in the future here. But yeah, it gets us some experience charms, it gets us some avoidance charms, and those experience charms are all going straight onto Lex, so that he can hopefully finally get access to a finisher. So I had, between the two zombie units, all experience charms will be going straight to the zombie units because they cannot level up any other way. They can't level up naturally. And so with that, we get one access to a fire finisher on account of this new Berserker. That was just a happy little surprise. Party level cap goes up a little bit, and we get all those points over to Lex. Chloe's doing a good job on just kind of ranged support soaking, as it were. But then I wanted to have a finisher on Lex here, since he's going to be a frontliner. He was doing okay, but it would be nice for him to have a finisher, because he is obviously going to be doing a lot of hitting. Additionally, all of these cheap Jewels the Avatar are going to be going on him as well, just to give him that little bit of extra edge in terms of avoiding things. I might stack him for avoidance charms later, on top of giving him a shield or something, but for now, it's fine. So we give him a little bit of extra health, we give him a finisher, and that's basically all she wrote on this particular one, so yeah. That is Chapter 2 achieved. We might get immediately soft bricked after this, but I have a plan. I have several plans, in fact. And yes, one of them will involve using Rune Fencer Surfing to get through the Aqueduct. So, we'll get there when we get there. So, thank you all for stopping by. That's about all there is for this one. And, yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Later.